Thank you.
My bad. All right, if we can have, we have our candidates up here. If we get panelists to have a seat. And those of you that would like to visit, I'll see if I can get the bar open downstairs. Just a thought. Now, Steve, do you want me to go through this whole thing again, introduce the panelists and the whole 9 yards? You good with that? Okay.
Yeah, the panelists get to introduce themselves. Or
Not the candidates, yeah, they'll introduce themselves, but do you want me to introduce all the panelists again? Do you want me to thank your awesome sponsors again? Do you want me to tell them who I am?
No,
Okay, good. Not that. Okay, good. All right, well, welcome. Our two candidates are, Robert Teuton, did I pronounce that correct?
Very good.
Teuton? Okay, I'm really bad at the name, so. And Robert Kurth, they are here as candidates for, I believe, Family Court Department D, correct?
Correct.
That being said, a couple of rules you guys need to keep in mind. These rules are also for our panelists. Candidates are allowed 1.5 minutes to introduce themselves. Panel members are allowed 30 seconds to pose a question. Candidates are allowed 1 minute to answer that question. Panel members are allowed 1 question. The question may be to one candidate, or the same question can be posed to all candidates if it is a yes or no response question. However, I will be the judge of that, whether you can respond with an actual statement or just yes or no answer. This is not a forum to air personal grievances. Panel members, please keep your questions generic, as you have already been doing. Candidates, do not mention other candidates in your responses. Our first question will be from Mr. Blanchard to my right. Mr. Blanchard? I'm sorry, keep doing that, don't you? Gentlemen, candidates, please introduce yourselves. Judge, go ahead, you are the incumbent.
All right. I am the incumbent in Department D. I'm pleased that in 2008 I was vetted by the Judicial Selection Commission. I was unanimously recommended to Governor Gibbons, who then thereafter appointed me. Interesting side note, the 2 other people that were referred to the governor are also both sitting judges, Duckworth and Austin. I'm really happy to be in the position I'm in. My current job assignment on the family court bench is abuse and neglected children. I have about 1,500 children on my caseload, about 700 cases, including roughly 60 termination of parental rights cases. I came here in 1977, clerk for a judge. Went to work 10 years in the district attorney's office, worked up the ranks. Before becoming a judge, before being appointed, I was the assistant district attorney over the juvenile and the family divisions. Before that, I was with what is currently the Clark County Department of Family Services and Juvenile Justice. So I've spent about 20 years of my career directly involved with families and children. I'm looking forward to spending another 6 years in the same capacity.
Mr. Kurth.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to interview with you today. My name is Robert Kurth. I'm a practicing lawyer here. I've been in private practice of law in my 22nd year. I was raised in Las Vegas. I went to school out at BYU, graduated from UNLV while I was working in construction full-time here for steel engineers, and met my wife up at BYU. I have 4 children, 3 college graduates, and my third one's going to get a degree in dental hygiene here in August and have a bachelor's. And then I have a 15-year-old fast pitch softball player at home. I grew up on the east side of town, went to El Dorado High School. In my law practice, I've practiced, about 50% of my practice has been family law, because I also do construction, wills, trust, probate, criminal, and real estate. And I think that's always helped me in the family law area because it deals with all these other issues, even when I used to do bankruptcy, because you deal with all these issues interrelated with the families. And I'm running for family court judge because I care about our community, the place my family calls home. And I want to give back to the community as I've been involved in the Boy Scouts, soccer, and other activities. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kurth. I will remind, the panelists already know this, I will cut them off at the 30-second mark. Gentlemen, I don't mean to be rude to you, but I will cut you off at the minute mark for your responses to their questions. I was going to start on this end, but he's got a special question at the very end for all of candidates, so I'm going to start. Ms. Minhares, please.
Perfect.
Thank you. First question, 30 seconds, please.
All right, this is directed to Bob Teuton.
Is that on?
This is directed to Bob Teuton.
Have you ever had an attorney point out an error you made procedurally or in applying the law? And if so, did you correct your error or dig in your heels and make excuses to save face?
1 minute.
No, it's not the role of the judge to be obstinate. It is our role to correctly apply the law. When attorneys, actually I can't think of a situation arising, but should it arise, I have no ego. I mean, the role of the judge is to do the right thing, to apply the law correctly, and to follow through. So it wouldn't bother me at all if an attorney brought an error to my attention. I would not hesitate to correct it.
Thank you. Ms. Fee, your next question, please.
Okay, if I can, I'll ask both candidates.
Both candidates.
In family law, in instances of divorce and that type of thing, I assume that oftentimes there may be a disagreement in education. So I'm just curious, on a personal level, where each of you, what you think about homeschooling.
I'll give you each 30 seconds. Mr. Kurth, you go first, please.
Thank you. During my practice, I've represented people that have their kids homeschooled, and I've dealt with those issues in the trenches and been on both sides of it. I have no particular problem with homeschool. I think it's great. You still have to pass certain proficiency tests, and sometimes it's better for the child because they get along better. They are not as adaptable, some of them I know. I can think of one of my clients whose child went to Odyssey Charter Schools, which is kind of a homeschooling program, and it does affect some issues concerning later on.
Thank you. Mr. Teuton, your response, please.
In general, I have no problem with homeschooling of children. I think the one caveat is a tremendous part of the public school education or private school education is socialization. And as long as there are things in place that ensures that the child is learning how to interact and deal with other children, those are the skills they're going to need when they become an adult. The educational component, reading, math, history, those ideas can be taught.
Thank you, sir. It is tough to answer a question in 30 seconds. I get it. I get it. Dr. Hawkins, your turn, please.
This is for Mr. Kurth. Historically, in Las Vegas, we've been very slow to removing a sitting judge unless there was a problem, at which point typically the bar lines up behind a candidate. Is there some particular reason right now that we should move and unseat a sitting judge?
Well, I know that I can be fast. In judicial races, we don't want to see anything necessarily negative.
You have a minute. Please go ahead.
What I'll tell you is that I believe that I'm the candidate that has been practicing family law in the trenches. I've been dealing with other attorneys. I've been dealing with other judges. I've seen the ones that get the black robe fever. I know how you should deal with them. I know how to run. I believe I know how to run a courtroom. I've been an arbitrator since 2001. I've also sat as a small claims court referee and a child support hearing master. And I believe in this position you need somebody that has handled divorce, has handled these issues concerning the children, the separation and the moving and everything else that's involved, guardianship cases, so on and so forth, and even when they get older. And I think I'm that person who will do the best job for our community in that position.
Thank you. Next question, please, Ms. Dupree. And you'll
Did you forget about me?
He keeps forgetting.
Okay, so this is for
Mr.
both
Jones,
candidates,
I
and
apologize.
I'll keep it brief this time. Okay, so in a case of custody, okay, so you have one spouse that's a vet, the other one is not. Do you give privilege to the vet?
I'll go first. Well, you don't give privilege to anybody coming into custody, whether or not they're the father, the mother, the grandparent, a vet, a non-vet, union member, whatever it may be. I mean, you need to look at what's in the best interest of the child, obviously. Now, usually the attorneys say they're arguing for the best interest, but they're usually arguing for their clients. And you have to weed through that situation and see what is really going on. I think with vets, you could have some things that could come up where they could be having some issues afterwards. You want to be careful not to use that against them and just order something like supervised visitation because somebody's claiming they're still having some issues from doing some TERS, or you have to look at that and be sensitive to all the issues that are involved and make sure ultimately your goal is to have the time spent best with the child, with each parent.
Perfect timing, Mr. Teuton.
I very much concur with Robert's remarks. You know, the issue is best interest of children and the status of the parent. Absent some sort of alcohol or drug use issues is immaterial. I personally am of the philosophy that a child deserves two parents, and my preference has always been joint custody decisions, absent some reason not to do so.
Thank you very much. Next question, please.
For both candidates, is it on?
Doesn't sound like it's on. Steve?
Slide it up.
Is it on?
On?
There you go.
Okay. About 58,000 children every year are court ordered to live with a parent who abuses them. Divided equally between states, it amounts to about 4 children a day in Las Vegas or 1,160 children a year in Nevada. About 90 will be brutally murdered following these orders. That's one every 4 days. What do you do to avoid these tragedies from happening in your court or in your future court?
Mr. Teuton, please respond first.
Sure. I mean, the key there, you're obviously looking in hindsight as to what's happened when orders have been entered. Fortunately or unfortunately, our system is dependent upon litigants presenting all the information necessary to make an informed decision. It's really unfortunate if those statistics that you cited are true, and I don't doubt that they are. But when the information is brought to our attention, we should take action immediately to prevent that from occurring.
Thank you. Mr. Kurth, 30 seconds.
Thank you. Usually in the court system, you want to err on the side of the children. I mean, you have to initially err on the side on their safety and their protection. But then you have to weed it out and make sure that these other allegations or things that are being made are truthful or not. Because many times they're not truthful or they're exaggerated. I always tell my clients, when you go into family court, get ready that, when you hear the mountain into a molehill or a molehill into a mountain, that's what they're doing. Because they're going to exaggerate, bring everything up. So as a jurist and as working with the clients, I think I can weed through that. And,
Thank you. Judge Luke, your turn. Next question, please.
Thank you. For the benefit of both of you, I will disclose that I am not going to be voting on the endorsement, nor will I participate in the discussion of the panel on doing the endorsements. I was asked to do this because of my knowledge of family court. My question is as follows. Number one, we know that the number of judges we have is limited, but we can't stop people from filing cases. There's open courts. And number three, there's a lot of pro se litigants, and I think around 60%. How would you propose to add programs, or what would you do differently, restructure the court or whatever, to cope with these increased caseloads and yet address the cost of going through the systems?
Kurth, I'll let you go first. I'll give you one then.
Thank you. One program as which the court has started is like a volunteer mediation program. I mean, I firmly believe in mediation. I firmly, in my practice, try to get the clients, if they can come to a decision amongst themselves with the help of somebody else, they're more likely to follow that decision. They're more likely to follow those orders and wait for the judge to slam down the gavel and say, this is what you're going to do no matter what. So I think if we could get into that a little bit more, maybe not the voluntary mediation, but we could push them into not just mediation concerning child custody, because they often think they can do the assets and debts and liabilities. We need to push them to that type of mediation. And I firmly believe in that BDR process.
Thank you very much. Mr. Teuton.
Certainly. In my career, I've had an opportunity to try to think outside the box on numerous occasions, and I think this is one of those occasions, Mr. Wood. I think that the idea of mediation presupposes that the parties have already got involved in litigation mode. They have to file a complaint, they have to take some action, which takes them down a path that really is not appropriate in family court. I think what needs to be done is there needs to be something akin to an order upon consent and a pre-filing mediation, perhaps using judges, perhaps using less expensive personnel, but getting the people to resolve the differences between themselves before they incur the costs of going to court. I mean, ultimately, most decisions are made with consent of the parties. When there are attorneys involved, the attorneys come to the agreement. When there's pro se litigants, it's generally done in a court. I think we could take all the cost, time, and effort out of the system if we had more pre-filing programs available to the public.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Lamb, you have the next question.
Gentlemen, for both of you, I would like you to utilize your insight, your judicial insight, and give me an idea what you think will be the future of veterans issues as they come into family court. And I would appreciate it if you wouldn't talk about deployments or separations, because those are orders that come from the federal government. That's part of the life that we accept. But I want to hear what you think is going to be happening with veterans when they walk into your courtroom.
And gentlemen, please keep this to 30 seconds. Mr. Teuton, your response.
A minute?
30 seconds.
30
We're on a
seconds?
tight schedule.
All right. A big issue that was resolved with the passage of AB 358, having to do specifically with deployments, where the courts did not consider a prior deployment or future deployment in making child custody decisions, and that any order that is entered when a uniformed serviceman is in fact deployed is a temporary order, which tells me that those are all big issues prior to the passage of that legislation. I think that has been and will be the primary issue of custody going forward.
Steve, if I may?
You did, yes, please.
Judge, I didn't want to talk about the deployment situation. We in the military accept that. Our families accept that. That's required. I'm not talking about divorce when they're on active duty, because in that instance, they're not veterans. They're still active duty. I'm talking about once they're finished, they're here in the United States, they're here in Las Vegas, they've been married for a while, now they're standing in front of your court. These guys have PTSD, they're messed up in the brain, they're angry, they're frustrated. The economy's put them in the dumper. They can't get a job. Now they're standing in front of you and they're wondering what's going on. These are people who received bullets, shot bullets, looked death in the eye. And now they're standing in front of a judge as their family's falling apart. I'm wondering from you, what kind of insight do you have with regards to people like that?
And Mr. Lamb, I'm giving you liberty as a Marine Corps veteran. Mr. Kurth, I'm going to let you have 30 seconds, and I will give you a 15-second response, Mr. Judith.
You know, you have to consider when they come in, what issues are they having? Because in a divorce, people are making those accusations like I spoke of before. I think there's services out there, and you want to make sure if you're having any of these PTSD issues, or if you need to take that into consideration, you need to find out, are you a veteran? First of all, you need to find that out. So we need to know that when they're coming in to let us know ahead of time, like they do in Veterans Court. So that you can consider what else may be going on with them, and then refer them to the right services and trying to arrange everything. And
thank you, Mr. Kurth. 15 seconds, Mr. Food.
Yeah, well, I agree with Robert on the issue. I think any litigant that comes before us, veterans, because of perhaps the unique circumstances that cause whatever their present issues are, as opposed to anybody else. We need to discern what the issues are and make sure that they're being appropriately addressed. And in the meantime,
thank you. Mr. Melendrez, you have the next question.
I have a question that kind of goes with the pro se issues that you're faced with as a judge, or you may be faced with as a judge. And my question is, what kind of techniques do you employ, or would you employ in the courtroom when you're presented with the situations where you have the pro se and say someone that is represented by counsel, to make sure the process is fair for both parties in that case?
Mr. Teuton, you first, please. 30
Sure.
seconds. I'm sorry, 30 seconds, please.
I've had the experience. Basically, they're not entitled to any preference, but they are entitled to an education. If they don't know exactly what they're doing, I will prod them with appropriate questions to get the information out. I don't like attorneys taking advantage of pro se litigants, because bottom line is they came to court to get issues resolved. They need to be resolved legally, appropriately, and justly, whether they're competent in presenting the issues or not.
Thank you. Mr. Kurth.
you know, you need to educate them. That's the main thing. I've dealt with a lot of pro se litigants in arbitrations even, and having to explain the process so they know, so they're not prejudiced. And I know what they're going through, and they just have to be educated on the process. And then when you're there, if you run your calendar appropriately, I think you can talk to them. And sometimes you have to have them sit down and say, make me a list, or go out in this room, the two side rooms, and make me a list of what you're asking for and what you want specifically, and what your problems are, or why you're getting divorced, and then come back to me and let's deal with it right then.
Thank you very much. Mr. Blanchard will have the last question. Gentlemen, you have 1 minute to respond. Mr. Blanchard and Mr. Teuton, please take the first.
Thank you both first for running for re-election. I know it can be a little bit tough, especially when you know what you're up against and you've seen it in the courtrooms. Give me one quality that you obtain that sets you apart from your opponent for you to have the job as the judge.
Mr. Teuton, 1 minute.
All right. I think in terms of one quality, I think it's judgment and temperament. I'm a patient jurist. I think people will respect the result if you give them an opportunity to speak. I will listen to them, make my decisions.
Very good, thank you very much. Mr. Kurth?
I would say experience. Experience working with families. Experience working with the children specifically. Experience in seeing what they're going through. The high income clients, the low income clients, knowing that money has an effect on settling cases and on some people giving up or giving in and things not going in the right direction, which it should always be in the best interest of the child and children involved.
Very good. Thank you both as candidates for your participation in Veterans in Politics. Panelists and audience, please give our candidates